Radio gents, good morning, and I'm going to walk you through a few of our financial ratios that we use in business to tell us a little bit more about the data that we see in our spreadsheets or our controls, being the balance sheet, the income statement, and the cash flow statement. But the first financial ratio we're going to have a look at is the current ratio. Now, the current ratio, as it sort of speaks to itself, tells you about the current situation of the business, in particular, our ability to pay debts as they fall, or a business's ability to pay debts as they fall. The ratio is up here, and again, don't stress, these ratios will always be given to you. So, current ratio is our current assets over current liabilities. I've put together a balance sheet here, just plug some numbers in. Probably looks familiar to a lot of you. And I've just sort of muddled and made up some numbers there. No intent whatsoever to make it look good or bad. I've just plugged in the numbers and we'll see what the current ratio comes out as. And as we do in business, we interpret those numbers to tell us a little bit more about the business so that we can make judgment, we can make changes, and we can assess the business's performance and its position. So let's have a look at this particular case. So I've called this business up here Mad Max's Boating. And for the example's sake, Mad Max's Boating sells luxury yachts. Small luxury yachts, let's say that much, given their balance sheet. Our current ratio, it's represented as a ratio and it's a measure of liquidity. So liquidity basically meaning being able to turn things into cash. Hence why we only look at current assets and current liabilities, not non-current, because obviously the ability to turn them into cash is not as readily available as current. The generally acceptable ratio is 2 to 1. Now that figure can vary, and it only really varies in terms of its acceptability based on the type of business. I put a little note down the bottom here, which I'll highlight in yellow now, which basically states that low turnover businesses often require higher current ratios to operate effectively. So a low turnover business like a car dealer, a luxury car dealer for lack of a better term, would require a ratio maybe upwards of 2 to 1. They might even be trying for a ratio of 3 to 1. However, high turnover businesses, so supermarkets, service industries, coffee, dentists, anything where we're providing a service and we're getting lots of business in a weekly basis or over the course of a month, or a year for that matter, we can generally operate on lower current ratios. So it's not uncommon to see those businesses operating successfully on less than 0.6 to 1, or less than 0.1 to 1, or 0.8 to 1. However, it's obviously still desirable to have a relatively higher current ratio than lower. So let's have a look at this. Current assets. Our current assets for Mad Max Boating, we can go obviously find our current assets. We've got our 2 figures here and then our total figure down there. So let's highlight that. And then we've got to find our current liabilities. So we go down to current liabilities. Total current liabilities is 88,300. So let's highlight that as well. Now, if I go over here, I can do, and you guys can do this on your calculator, 59,500 divided by 88,300. That gives me 0.67. Or if we want to display this as a ratio, we would do 0.67 to 1. Now, one would probably have a look up here and say, okay, based on what we know, it's a relatively low, a low ratio or a low current ratio. And now we'd probably take a step from here and have a look at the type of business. Mad Max Boating, luxury boating, again, it's probably a low turnover business. We're not looking at turning over heaps of units in a year in comparison to, say, a fishing store or your local corner store. So we would consider this a low turnover business. So interpreting that data, what do you think? Do you think it's a good current ratio or a bad current ratio? I'll leave that thought with you, but that's how we look at the current ratio, getting the number and how we represent that figure.